Hello and welcome back to Galgorm Hall for this last update of 2019. It's been quite a journey this year in terms of the layout. There's been an awful lot of work has got done, not maybe as much as I would like to have, but life gets in the way sometimes. But this video is more or less a review of the last year's work, and there's a little bit of an insight into what's coming for 2020. In the middle of the video I also have a little demonstration on how I'm weathering up some vent wagons for a train. It's a very simple and quick process, and it's just something to make them look a little bit scruffier and more realistic, prototypical if you want, and on the layout. As many of you will know, visited Worley for the first time this year, and such an incredible experience that was. I really can't put it into words. I just don't know what I expected whenever I got there. I don't know if I expected to be as vast, as busy and as friendly as what it was. To meet up with so many fellow YouTubers and my subscribers alike was a great experience. And for me, coming from Northern Ireland, it can be quite difficult to have any sort of physical meeting ups with you guys, and it's it was brilliant just to be able to spend some of that time speaking to you. In actual fact, the Hornby meetup or the YouTube meetup that was happening at the Hornby stand at 11 o'clock I just got in for, and it was an hour and a half after that before I actually started doing a circuit of the exhibition, just because there were so many people to speak to, and the conversations were just so interesting. But look, you don't really want to listen to me banging on about Worley. I'm sure you've heard enough of it, but I just wanted to touch on that. In terms of my subscribers, I started this year off in and around 1,000, and we finish it at just over the 3,000. And I just want to say a huge thank you to every single one of you for taking the time to watch, to support and to follow the channel. It really means an awful lot to me, and I hope you'll be there for the journey into 2020 and beyond. Right, let's move on to the video. I hope you enjoy it. Actually, there's a couple of little running shots throughout the video, and I've just taken the opportunity to put a little bit of a blurb at the bottom. In a way it's a bit of a shout out to a number of different channels or people via their particular layouts. Some of the channels you may well know already. Some of the layout names may mean absolutely nothing to you, and they don't actually have any YouTube content, those particular ones that you may be not aware of, but they'll know who they are. And I just wanted to give them a shout out for help and support and friendship that we've had throughout this year. And it's also something I'm going to do in future updates moving into next year. I'd like to give some more shout outs in that sort of way. I thought it was just a sort of a novel way of doing it. So if you recognize a channel, search it up on YouTube, and if they have some content and you're not a subscriber, check them out. You may well like what they're up to. So anyway, let's get on with the video. One of the main goals of this year would have been to get some of the greenery in place on the layout. If you remember way back in January, this whole area would still have been plaster cloth and just a painted brown surface to it. And like I say, this was a priority for me to get at least this section greened up to a level that it made running trains through it a little bit more realistic. Now obviously there's still an awful lot has to be done in this area. The scratch build up in the top of the hill there, the little patch of ground in around it still needs working on, and I've just sort of held back in doing it at the minute because there's a wee bit of work I still want to do on the scratch build. The internal shop still has to be built and installed, and a little bit of lighting fitted as well. And once that's all done, then I can get that all bedded down in properly, and the grass and shrubbery done in around that. but the rest of it I would say is more or less done. I might come back, and actually I will come back and add a few flowering plants. I've done one little experiment on it, which you'll see later on, further on round, and I want to do a little bit more of that, just to sort of throw out a wee bit of different colour than the variations of greens that you can see there at the minute. Again, in this area I am still waiting to do my level crossing gates. That's an ongoing project for Justin over at Scale Model Scenery, and I'm not in any particular rush. I have a particular plan or drawing that I came across of an old GNR level crossing gates, and I'm hoping that Justin can sort of put that together into a laser cut kit for me that I'll just set off that little area. Just in front of it, next year we will start the signal box scratch build series. I'm hoping to sit down in January time and at least get the plans drawn up for that, and then I can start sort of planning together myself what needs to be done in terms of the build process, and then I can start that video. But that would certainly be the next building that's to get done down in this area. So let's move the camera around and we'll take a look in around the branch itself, or in the goods yard itself. So the goods yard hasn't really changed an awful lot. Again, a little bit of greenery added in and around it, but most of this was already in place prior to the start of this year. I have, though, started looking at some of the additional detailing to bring the yard to life. Obviously there's the wagons that are sitting there in front of you, and I'll come back to them in a minute. Let me just move those out of the way. So the yard itself has had the coal staves added and some real coal fitted in there too. You'll see the odd little bit of paraphernalia sitting on the goods platform itself. I have a few barrels, a couple of crates and a couple of milk churns sitting there, and I'm slowly building up some more items that will get added to that, just to give the feel that it's still a yard that's in full use, and it's certainly a dependent aspect of this rural community that the railway brings and takes away goods from the area. A few items I intend to add to the platform are some of Scale Model Scenery's kits. I have the shipping crates. I've actually built one of those to date. They're all very fiddly little kits and they just sort of take time. And I've also got fruit and veg crates. Now the fruit and veg crates, I like the idea of, one, they look great, but what I want to do is to sort of fill them up with some apples or oranges, something like that there, that are either coming from the farmland and around the area, and they're going by wagon into the main towns, something like that there. So I want to build up a few of those and have them sitting. Also, when at Worley I picked up some barrels, Slater's plastic card barrels, and from Dark Castings I have a couple packing cases as well. So all those still need to get painted and weathered up, and then we can sort of start scattering them around that platform. You'll see in the distance there I have one of the buffer stops installed. That is the Pico, is it LK10, something like that. That's their little kit, very simple little kit to make, and with the same weathering technique that I used on the plate girder bridges in one of my previous videos, I did that on the buffer stop too. I have another one that hasn't quite reached that weathering stage, but it will go on the branch terminus siding there in due course. Also, I have been working on the little coal conveyor. This has also been weathered, painted and weathered, and is in place. I had intended to use the Coopercraft trailer to have coal bags being loaded onto, but I'm not really happy enough with that kit. I think I'm going to look at something else. I'd actually like a little lorry that is loading up the coal ready for delivery in the area. You'll also see, just sitting beside the goods yard office, a skip. This actually came from one of my son's, out of my son's toy box. He had a little skip lorry toy, which, well, basically had fallen apart. It was one of these wee cheap ones out of Poundland. It had two big hoops right on either side of it, you know, to hook it up onto the lorry. The lorry ended up in the bin, and I sort of pinched the skip. In terms of size, it's quite, you know, it's not bad scale for 00. It's perhaps a little bit small, but sure, skips came in all shapes and sizes. But I have it painted up and weathered, and I'm just going to fill it with odds and ends as I come across them, maybe sort of broken up pallets or something like that there, you know, in due course. And we'll fill that little skip just to give a little bit of added detail. But again, there's an awful lot more still needs to be added into this area, and it's something I sort of keep coming back to, on and off, you know, whenever the notion takes me just to want to sort of, oh, I fancy modelling some crates. That's what I'm going to do today. Just while we're in this area, maybe you can just see right up in this top corner here, there's a little flash of pink. That was my attempt at sort of creating some floral additions to the scenery, and I will come back to that next year and look at that a little bit more. Didn't turn out too bad. It's got that nice flash of colour that I was looking for. Not 100% convinced on the stalks. It's basically the woodland scene, you know, the reed rushes that you get the packs of. It was some of them cut down and glued into place. It's okay, you know, but I will come back and revisit that in due course. Moving back to these wagons, one of the things that I have been wanting to do is to get a rake of wagons for a train to pull. And I've been gathering up these 12-ton wagons in various guises, you know. They're all the BR bauxite, or some of them are kit built. In actual fact, I think that one there is a Dapple. These two are Bachmann, and this is a Parkside Dundas kit. But in terms of how they look, you know, they all blend in very well together. But one of the things I had been wanting to do was to do a little bit of weathering, just to dirty them up. It's a very, very quick process, and I'll just show you quickly here what method I've been using to create that effect. So this is a very quick 10-minute weathering process for a wagon. You could go into an awful lot more detail than this, but in all honesty, I just need something that looks a little bit dirty, a little bit run down, and once it's put in with a rake with a whole lot of others, you really can't tell an awful lot of difference. So let's get on with it. This is actually a Mogo van. I'm not sure it would have run on a rake along with sort of standard 12-ton vans or fruit vans, that sort of thing, but you know, rule one, you know. It's actually been given some sort of light weathering before. I bought this at Worley and didn't realise it was weathered until I got it home, so I've tried to clean it up as best I can, but in all honesty, that little bit of variation in the colour tones will probably only help to enhance the weathering effect at the end. So I'm going to take some cinnamon brown acrylic, if it'll come out. There we go. We don't need an awful lot of this. It's only this one wagon I'm going to demonstrate with you. Normally I would do sort of 3 or 4 at a time, and sort of run a little bit of a conveyor system on it, and then a tiny bit of black, not too much. You could just go straight black on this, but I don't particularly like it. I think it's just too stark. I think having the brown in along with it gives it a better sort of finish. I want that darker than that. So this sort of gives a combination of that sooty thing that you would have had certainly during steamier times, but also the just general dirt and grime from the elements as the trains run through the countryside. So that sort of colour there, it is very dark, almost sort of a sleeper grime type colour. Would it be maybe too dark for that? And then we're going to take our wagon and we're just going to slab it on. Right the way across the whole thing, making sure we get into all the grooves of the planks, if it is a plank van that you've got. If it's a panel van, well, again, you're just sort of ensuring that you get right into the recesses where the iron frame of that van would be. And we'll work on one side at a time, and with a piece of kitchen towel we'll rub in a vertical motion down from the roof towards the underframe and take most of it off. Now, it's entirely up to you as to how much or how little you want to take it off, and if anything, you would sort of vary it with each wagon that you're working on to give a variation in the finish that those wagons would have. And you're going to get, with that vertical brushing of the kitchen roll, you're going to get those streaks coming down as it. Sorry about that, a phone call came through in the middle of that that narration there. Right, I've gone on ahead anyway, and I've weathered the other side and one of the ends, but just before I finish, I wanted to just point out the sides are always easier to do than the ends, and that's basically just because there's a little bit more detailing in around your end sections of a wagon, you know, such as the buffer beams and coupling hooks, that sort of thing there. So just take extra care. You can still use the kitchen roll to a certain degree, but if it's a little bit too, use it just to take the worst of it off, and then you can use a cotton bud just sort of to clean the rest away. And a couple of buds. You maybe don't have to just be as clean in this area of the wagon. It's likely that it's going to gather up an awful lot more dirt, being sort of in between the wagons or even at the end of a train, so it will probably look a little bit dirtier. But that's that. Leave that to dry, and we'll come back, and once dry, hopefully you can see that looks quite well. We've got all our grooves filled out in the timber. It's gathering in around the framework as well, and certainly along the roof line too, and equally the same at the end. Actually, on this one here, I painted one of the timber strips a slightly beigey colour just to give the impression that it was a new wood panel that was put in. It would need toned down a little bit more and a variation of colour put on that just to soften it a little bit more, but that's another option for you as well. And just as a comparison, this is another one that's on the way to its final weathering. Slightly different in terms of colour, the actual wagon itself. This is a much more reddish This is a dapple wagon, this is a Bachmann one, but again it just adds to the overall realism and effect of your train whenever there are variations in colour right the way down it, whether it be in the paintwork on the sides or even on the rooftops as well. So the next stage is to look at the underframe, the sole bars and buffer beams and that. So I'll gather up the materials necessary for that, and then we'll have a wee quick demonstration of what goes on there too. With the acrylic wash now dried, we can look at doing the underframe. And for that I have a number of materials that we're going to use. We're going to use Revell's Matte 82, Revell's Matte 83, and then I've got a couple of the Humbrol weathering powders. We've got Dark Earth and we have Iron Oxide as well. So to start with, we're going to do a little bit of dry brush on the underframe with the Revell paints. So you need a bit of kitchen roll just to take the most of the paint off the brush, and then we'll just dry brush in around the underframe and the sole bars and the brake shoes and everything else, the buffer beams, just until you're sort of happy with the finished effect. And you can be as heavy or as light as you want on this. Similar with the wash that we've applied to the box van part of the wagon. It's all about variations in your train, heavy and light weathering of them. Now I'm not going to clean the brush at any point, we'll just sort of keep using the same thing. So you're going to get little variations in the tonal colours. Now with the 83 Revell, I'm really only concentrating it around the axle boxes. I'll not do too much of it on the underframe, but it's just enough to give a light notion of some rust and that beginning to come through on the wagon. So with that done, we can then take our powders and I do like the Dark Earth one. It really sort of adds a nice finish to it. And I'm not being overly careful with this. Again, it's just to accentuate the dirt and the grime, and also with the powders I'll bring them up onto the van as well. Now after you've completed this, you can seal it all in with a very fine misting of matte varnish, but beware that whenever you're applying any sort of varnish, it does tend to you do tend to lose some of that weathering aspect of it. In my case, I don't think I'm going to bother. I'm sort of using that dry brushing as a gluing agent almost for it, which will help just sort of hold it all in. It's just the two different brushes that we're using here as well, just a broader one for the dry brush and then a finer one for the actual weathering powders. Just Just blow some of the excess off that, and hopefully you can see. See if we can catch the light properly in that. So that's it beforehand. It's dulled everything down quite a bit, and then if we look at the other side, obviously much more shiny. Let me get another wagon in that has already been done, and I can sort of show you a comparison as well. So this is the one that we've just done, and if we turn it around to the side that's not been completed yet, and we put one of the others on, hopefully you can see. Can you see that? Just enough to give it a bit of a grimy effect, and then again the side that has been done. Now you could also add a touch of black weathering powder too. Just in around, particularly in around the door areas where there would be a lot of handling as doors are closed and opened. And that's it. The only other thing actually that needs doing, and we'll do it quickly here, I can get the paint out, would be an acrylic brush of the roof. Now I'm just going to use the black for this, and I'm just going to paint right across the roof. Much like I showed you the plank in a different colour, what you could also do with the roof is to square off certain small sections of it and add a darker grey or even a black square of paint, just sort of to represent patchwork that has been done on the roof. I haven't actually done it in this one, but I might do it in the next one. And then we're just going to rub that off. And I'm rubbing it along the length of the coach, but I will also do across it, as the rain would wash off that, taking the dirt with it. Not leaving too much on, but it's just enough to dirty up the roof a little bit on it to help accentuate the wear and tear on the wagons. And that's basically what I've been doing on all my wagons for this train, and hopefully you'll agree that it does just make them look a little bit more realistic. So I'll crack on and I'll finish this, and this one will be ready to add to the fleet. And then we move around to the section of the layout that I really had hoped that I would get further on with this year than I have. You know, you sort of look at a year and you think it's a long time to get plenty of work done, but you know, life gets in the way of things, and even your modelling interest changed throughout the year too. So I didn't concentrate on this as much as I thought I was going to, but I have come back to it just in the latter part of this year, sort of very much in November and December here. You'll have seen my videos on the bridge that takes the branch beneath the main line before it loops on round the back, the building of that bridge, and then also the weathering of the plate girders. So they're all done. You'll also see in the distance there, just where the Jubilee sits, I have a tunnel portal, and there's another one just off camera to the right as well. And then also there's a road bridge in the process of being built across the main line. Now I haven't done a how-to step-by-step guide video on this. What I have been doing instead is doing regular pictures and posting them up on my Facebook page at Galgorm Hall. If you want to see how that has been built, certainly to the stage that it's at now, take a look over there, and I've sort of there must be about 30 odd pictures now in the process, you know, the different stages, and there's also a scale drawing of the actual bridge should you want to take on the task of making one of those yourself. But I thought it was just something a little bit different. Rather than sitting doing a video each time for these things, I thought I would just try a written version of it, for want of a better word, instead. But basically, now that the tunnel portals are done, once that bridge is finished, that is all the structures that I require in that area, that then I can start moving ahead with more of the card formers to build up the landscape. You can probably tell from there that obviously the tunnel, where the tunnel portal is and where the bridge is, you can see that there's quite a height from the tunnel portal up to the bridge to create that hill effect, so it will climb quite a lot higher on that side. Where the branch runs through beneath the main line, it'll be quite a deep cutting before it enters the portal. And then sort of beyond the road bridge across the main line there, I have a vision at the minute. I was talking with Clint from Layla Central there just a couple of weeks ago, and a little idea popped in my head after something that he mentioned, and I think I may well be going back to one of the Will's Craftsman's kits. I'm looking at the little farm cottage, and the idea would be that that road would sort of turn around and head in towards that far corner of the back scene, with one of these little Will's Craftsman farmhouses sitting hugging the roadside, and hopefully, if I have enough space on the other side, a couple of outbuildings as well. And that just the idea that that road travels right through the middle of this farm. We get quite a lot of that in around this area, and I thought I would like sort of to mimic that in some sort of representation on the layout. So that, in terms of work that I've done on the layout this year, more or less covers it. There's obviously been a couple of additional things. The mimic panel was something that I did recently over the summer months, was the inclusion of the fiddle yard, which was, it's been a massive addition to the layout in terms of getting the trains off the track and allowing me to move things on and off as much as I want, to be able to run trains an awful lot easier. And there we are. I hope you enjoyed that, and indeed I hope you're still watching at this stage. That's going to be my last video of this year. I've enjoyed producing every single one of them, but I'm going to take a few weeks well-earned rest, and I'll be back with you at some point in January with a brand new video. Not 100% sure what it'll be yet. It may well be the start of the scratch build signal box. It may be something completely different, who knows. But look, in the meantime, I hope every one of you have a very Merry Christmas and also a very happy New Year. And I'm going to go downstairs now, crack open a Guinness, and I'll raise a toast to every single one of you, and I'll speak to you again in 2020. All the best for now. See ya.